here, and that this is far more important than a plebiscite on same-sex marriage. Does it make sense to you that the line should be on the fact that he's talking about European versus non-European migration?
To call it a line, I think, is a little bit misleading. It's a bit of a noodle map. Of signaling to people here and people there, and it's really hard to kind of understand the signals. But for me, there was a really important litmus test in the US when we saw that Nazi march in Virginia and how Trump failed to call it out and called it out kind of like all sides were at risk. And so maybe this is the beginning of our calling out at least some really like neo-Nazi, engagement to me is like way, way bad. But seriously, it's like we have to take this broader view of the arc of history moving towards globalization. And here in our region, we have the Rohingyas, for example, that are Muslim and are on the move and are at risk, and they're right, pretty much on our doorstep. And so this kind of contradicts Anne's point about who really is at need. And more broadly, I think we have to have a lens of what the science is telling us, which is with sea level rise and storm surge, the IPCC predicts that more than 100 million people will be on the move at our doorstep, because this is where the mega deltas of the world are. And that will be climate induced, just like the drought in Syria has caused so much mobility there. So this is very simplistic to think about European and non-European. It's a human challenge.
Do you see the American debate on immigration having an impact on people who talk about it here, people such as Fraser Anning or even Bob Katter?
Very sadly, I sometimes Google the crazy groups that talk to each other about weird strategies that seem to work, and then often there's big money behind those strategies. Right. So absolutely. And I must say, it's really interesting. I'm originally from South America, and I was educated in the US, but I've been here for 30 years, and so I followed the Latinization of America very closely. And although we now have 7,000 people marching from Guatemala and El Salvador towards and that'll be very interesting. Also, when I go home, I now see that People magazine is translated into Spanish, and all of the TV channels are in Spanish, and pretty soon it's going to be the #1 language. Why? Because the arc of humanity is globalizing, and we're just moving around, and it is a Latin continent. So we here have some really interesting opportunities around that, and we have to think beyond this white, non-white.